Hey FFL, what's up? It's Air Force Ones, and today it's gonna be the FFL Franchise Rankings. So we all know about the best teams of all time, the best players of all time, but what about the franchise themselves? I low key forgot about this in like May of 2025, and then the last time like this shit was posted, and it was like April, 2 weeks before the season 6 Super Bowl. So I'm gonna finish this now. This is gonna be raw audio footage, no notes, no script, just straight to the point. I made some little fun facts before we start. There's been a total of 46 unique teams that were used in FFL. Now, I made this way before season 12 was an option. So now that the Bills and Saints are an actual team in season 12, when I update this, all 32 teams in the NFL will be used. But if we're going to exclude season 12, the teams that were never used were the Bills and Saints. And then the team with the most usage in FFL history was the Raiders, with 4 seasons being used in season 1, 4, 6, and 10. And if you're Trey and you want to count them for Firebirds, then it's technically a five-way tie between the Raiders, Rams, Eagles, Panthers, and Chargers with 3. And I just made a little list of all the teams that have been used throughout each season, from season 1 to season 11. I'm not going to explain that much into it. You can pause it if you want. And some little reminders that if a team was used twice, both of their seasons will be accounted for. Examples like the season 1, 5, and 10 Eagles, all of their seasons are going to be accounted for. And then rankings are going to be based on team success and roster depth, awards, all that stuff. I will be using the official rosters under the archives as the final rosters for old teams. I'm not going to include the pre-season 6, and I will be using the Colts versus Coyotes Super Bowl matchup when we talk about season 7 teams. I did make a template where it's like, this is like basically the format you're going to see throughout the whole entire slideshow. These are for teams that did make postseason, teams that did make postseason, and teams that are used twice or more. It's going to be a little bit different because I know a lot of teams have been used like 3 times, so it's going to be different as you see it. But that's about it. That's all for the intro. And we're going to start with number 46. I'm pretty sure we all know it's going to be the Washington Commanders. With a historically bad offense, bad defense, technically the first FFL team to go on 5, it's no surprise that they're going to be dead last on the list. With Ellie Trucify AF1 as their starting 3, Marksman and Quinnen as their subs. Not much accolades going on. It's just season 3 LVP, and then Horseshit Media of the Year won Media of the Year that year. And as you can see, yeah, the highest points that we scored in season 3 was 39 against Falcons. We only scored like 121 points in all season. We had the lowest points scored in FFL history with 7 in week 1. And we probably, the last game against the Jaguars was probably one of the worst games in FFL history. Not only to watch, but to also play. Coming in at number 45, we've got the Cleveland Browns from season 6. And some fun facts I did put about this team is that one of 2 winners of the MVP award won LVP this season, being Prom. And this is the third 0-5 team in FFL history. And low key, if this team was in UF, this would have been the second best team, like top 5 of all time of UF teams. Unfortunately, the skill didn't translate to FF2, and the only notable accolades from this section from the Cleveland Browns is Prom winning season 6 LVP, but that's about it. But coming in at number 44 is the Anchorage Polar Bears. We all know how bad Fanta, with the first 2 weeks of him wanting to be quarterback, but overall they did get a little bit better. That's why I have him above the Browns, because like they consistently scored more than 40 points with their shit show of a roster. I think that was after Fanta accepted the fact that he was ass on QB. So some facts I included is that I don't know if y'all remember, but Bijan led up 800 yards in the first 2 games of the season for the This is the fifth 0-5 team in FFL history, and they scored the fourth lowest points in a FFL game with 17. And the only accolades from this list is going to be Fanta winning LVP Season 9. Number 43, I got Ohio State Buckeyes. This this is another 0-5 team. This was the sixth, and I'm not sure if there's gonna be any defeated team in season 12. But for now, this is the last team in FFL history to go 0-5. And one thing to know about this is that every single draft pick that Bentley just picked is no longer on the roster. They originally had a T-Nut Fanta, and even fucking Control Q as a sub, but somehow he got traded. And there are no accolades for this team, which is kind of ass. Next up, number 42, I got New York Giants. This is the same situation with the Buckeyes. All of their original picks are no longer on team. Stu got banned. Lobs got traded to the Steelers, and AF1 got traded to the Raiders. And this is the first team to actually have a team member banned. And overall, there was just no chemistry with this team, in my opinion. Ellie didn't perform his best at QB. I think the only bright spot here was that Gigi Boy winning Season 6 All Pro DB3. Bite was washed. Bentley didn't have much of an impact. So overall, this is not that good of a performance by the Giants. But they did went 1-4, so beating the Browns. So that's something for them. At number 41, I got Season 11 Old Dominion Monarchs. They went 1-4, and a little fun fact about them: they managed to maintain 3 subs at the end of the trade deadline, with them being Gavin, Gigi Boy, and Control Q. And fun fact about this team is that they managed to score 315 points despite that horrific Week 2 loss to Mean Green. And they got a lot of more accolades than all the other teams I previously mentioned. They got Tina winning Kick Return of the Year, Tina making All Pro Season 9 for DB3 and Kick Returner, Duck winning 4th Man of the Year, and then Brand being an All Pro wide receiver number 2. Overall, this team, it had potential, to say the least, but I just think it was unfortunate. Next up, I got Alabama Black Bears from Season 7. And every single member of the original Black Bears roster are no longer on the team. That includes Brand, Turlock, Ellie. They all left. And then this team had the lowest point differential between all the other 1-4 teams in Season 7. And Gavin actually had 22 interceptions allowed as a wide receiver. And they did go on a 4-game losing streak after that Week 1 win against the Jets. And I don't know when exactly the team collapsed. I think it was after the Week 2 loss against Sacramento. But Brian just didn't work out at QB, and Blocks was trying his best. There's nothing he could do. Gavin was being burnt on defense, and Bijan just ran cardio. And the only accolade from this team is that Brand won Season 7 LVP. Next up, I got at 39 is the Cincinnati Bengals from Season 7. I put this team over the Black Bears because they obviously won by like 20 plus points. So that's something. And, this team, honestly, I think it got a little bit better, even though they still managed, like after Week 4, they did a little bit better than Black Bears because they made a lot more improvements than the original roster. Bentley switching back to wide receiver was probably one of his more smarter moves because at him at quarterback, and then AF1 complaining at wide receiver 1 because he's not like a true wide receiver 1. And then Deck Tech remaining being at wide receiver 2, being the primary go route guy. It was not good at all until he made that switch to bring in Ellie to quarterback. I think that team got a little bit better over that. But the defense was horrific. 140 points their defense led up. And this was during at the time we complained like how defense was non-existent in UF, and this kind of showed Azrael's like I know Azrael's like the main one that was saying it, but this kind of like showed him in perspective. And another fun fact that Tech actually finished 4th in receiving yards, despite the quarterback situation. But this team does have no accolades. At number 39, I got the season 8 Dallas Cowboys. Honestly, out of all the teams out of season 8, this was probably one of my the best team in my opinion, at least to watch, especially against the Jaguars. I really loved watching the team, even though they were horrific. Balls just slinging that shit up to Rage Beast and Turbo. It's absolute cinema. I don't know about you guys. And Turbo did win season 8 most improved player for the accolades. But overall, this was an underwhelming team. But this was one of the more fun teams in season 8. Because a lot of other teams was just slanting, comebacks, and all that shit. Boss was not afraid to let that shit go deeper. At number 37, I got the Baltimore Ravens. This is the first team franchise that has been used more than twice, used more than once. My fault. And this team was piss poor. Yeesh. We're talking about. I mean, they had the famous shit bowl against the season 1 Chargers. So, but they did some. They managed to get the number 2 seed in the AFC, but of course it was a piss poor division within the AFC. So they got curb stomped by Raiders for the divisional loss. But they have a combined record of 3-6, and some accolades that I kind of want to talk about for this team. Brand and Blocks both won LVP in season 1. Latina made the All Pro for 3 different positions in season 10, with them being wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, DB2, and kick returner. And as you can obviously see, Blocks was the GM for both of the Ravens rosters, but they had completely different wide receiver cores. And it's no obvious that the season 10 roster blows the season 1 roster out of my mind. It's completely better. At number 36, I got the season 7 New York Jets. This was probably the better 1-4 teams out of season 7. Yes, I mean they did lose. They lost in the postseason and by the Coyotes. I did forget to mention that. I forgot to add that, but it don't really matter since they did lose. They lost. They lost six. They lost 102 to 102 to 48. So it was just a blowout win for Sacramento. So it's not really that important to mention. But Turlock, one thing to do mention is that Turlock had the third most receiving yards in a single season, with that being 2,230. Despite Thunder, he was all right that season. He wasn't that bad. He just kept tossing up to Turlock and putting him in those 50-50 situations. And Duck, this is where like Duck actually starts seeing playing time. This is where Doug actually developed to be a serviceable wide receiver 2, a decent DE, and they did have a extremely a game of the year candidate game against the Coyotes week 5, but overall it was a disappointing postseason though. At number 35, I had the Los Angeles Rams. They did make postseason all 3 seasons that they've been like in the league, but they were only piss poor seeds, like the 5th seed for season 2 and 4, and only this 4th seed for season 8 because there was no play in. And obviously, they lost every play in. Like every time they step on the field in the postseason, they just lose. They lost. They lost 55-0 to the Titans in the play in season 2. They lost 80-63 against the 49ers season 4. And then they lost 104-59 in season 8 divisional round. So there's just overall no playoff success for this team whatsoever. And yeah, they kept the same core 3 with Thunder, True, and Blocks every time. And they always went 2-3, making their combined win-loss rate record being 6-9. And one thing I never realized that with without like going over it, they never won a week 3 or a 4 game, but yet they always managed to win week 5. And this season 2 was Thunder's infamous season for having the Jameis Winston season, 30 TDs, 30 interceptions, and some accolades is that Thunder won Sack Daddy, McTacklesworth, Blocks won Most Improved, made them All Pro as a wide receiver 2, Thunder made All Pro as a DE 1. And for season 4, Blocks won Kicker of the Year, Horseshit Media of the Year, which is True's Media, won Media of the Year. True managed to find himself in the All Pro roster as a DB2, and Blocks made the All Pro as a kicker. But I mean, if you make Kicker of the Year, it's pretty obvious that you're going to make the All Pro. So that's it. Coming in at number 34, I have season 11 Miami Hurricanes. This team had a good start, but I just think that they had an easier first half of the schedule than last half. Etan was an exceptional quarterback. He was extremely good considering what his wide receiver roster was. Carrying Rage Beast and Fanta is not an easy task, but I think like Fanta's slant playstyle helped get Etan adjusted to the league much easier. And some facts I did put up, this team did average 73.8 points per game, which is incredible to say the least. But however, they are the first FFL team to forfeit loss in the playoff, and this was due to scheduling because like they had multiple chances to talk with Mean Green, explain the situation, but it's like Rage Beast never reached out, and yeah, it resulted in the FFL. So I do think, regardless, they would have lost to Mean Green, but it would have been less embarrassing than the FFL. And this team had no accolades, so that's it to say the least. At number 33, I have the Seattle Seahawks. And this team is a prime example of what a shit team can do to bring down the franchise ranking. Because the season 2, low key, they could have gone a lot higher up, maybe like mid tier, if it wasn't for season 5. Because you had Bite holding the single season interception record with 25, but however, you had season 5. They went. This is the second team to go 0-5. Bijan did not take the draft seriously because he took fucking Turtwig 8th overall, and guess what? He wasn't even on the roster after the season. So having the combined record of 3-7 really dragged this team down. And yeah, that is a typo. It's supposed to say season 2. Whoopsie daisies. But the problem with the Seahawks too is that after like Weewoo had to go to the hospital, after like prior to week like 4, I believe, or week 5, this team just started going downhill. They they got upset by Army, got demolished by the Falcons, and then lost to the Falcons again in the postseason, 63-28. So another blowout loss. So it was gonna happen anyways. And some accolades, obviously Bite won defensive back of the year, but Duck did win fourth man of the year. Obviously Bite made All Pro DB1, but one thing to mention that yeah, Bijan did win season 5 LVP, and it was kind of expected. And the season 5 roster was the roster I found on the archive section, so I'm not really taking like this is like the last resort team because I believe this is a team that played week 5. I'm not sure, but for all I know, they all never played together, so that roster doesn't really matter. At number 32, I got the Arizona Cardinals. You know, they were solid, especially during the week 2, 3 stretch with Lobster absolutely breaking out as a wide receiver 2 and being a key part of being the Tigers week 3. But playoff struggle ensued. Obviously, you have the Balls' failed effort to throw away the ball right into my hands for a game-ending INT during the play-in. And then, obviously, like I said, Lobster's insane game at wide receiver against the Tigers helped them prevail. And True having the message of maybe I should have started Lobster in the playoffs rather than Brand. But this team did have some accolades. Brand won season 5 LVP. Lobster won Most Improved Player. He also won Fourth Man of the Year. His media channel won Media of the Year, and True made All Pro as a DB2. So overall, this team was all right, but playoff struggle, but struggled near the end of the regular season, and that kind of carried on to the postseason. At number 31, I got Chicago Bears from season 9. Loki, this team could have worked out, but I think because of the actual roster that everyone else had season 9, yeah, it was because like Thunder did have his best receiver, his best season receiver wise, but their defense was all not that good, and I think that's a key reason on why this team is down here. Because 60.8 points scored. No, oh my fault. Nah, because that's how much points they scored. 60.8, which is kind of showing how much Tarlock kind of like helped this team out a lot. Because carrying a receiver core of Thunder being your wide receiver 1 and Deck Tech being at your 2, mad props to Tarlock for that. But this defense was not that good either, so that's kind of another good reason that they didn't really make postseason. At number 30, I got Jacksonville Jaguars. This is another case with the Seattle Seahawks where it takes one season to fuck up the entire shit, bro. Because the season 3 Jaguars were nice like that. Somehow the team of Weewu, Turbo, and Fire slash Christian somehow managed to be 3-2, take the third seed, had some good wins, had some close losses, but season 8 under Ellie, this is the fourth team that went 0-5 in FFL history, giving them the combined record of 3-8. Obviously, they didn't make postseason season 8. And like Gavin carried the season 8 team, despite them having no wins. He makes up 4 out of 5 accolades for season 8 Jaguars, with him winning wide receiver of the year, kicker of the year. Also made the All Pro as a wide receiver 1 and kicker, and Bijan winning season 8 LVP. But season 3 Jaguars, Fire actually being a good receiver, and being the winning sack daddy McTackles were for a season on the defensive side extremely helped this team. With Turbo actually winning DB of the year as well, this team was well rounded, but I do like to think that they were a little bit stronger on the defensive side. But other than that, season 8 dragged us down a lot. Next up, I'd have the first over 500 team, the Army Black Knights. This is probably, in my opinion, the worst team to go 3-2. Because let's be real, they had a major upset week 5 against the Titans that shifted the entire playoff picture. Just for them to get belt to ass in the postseason, losing 20-76. But obviously, the original roster was supposed to be Azrael, Tina, and AF1. But after the week 1 loss to the Rams, obviously, and I believe obviously it played a huge factor into AF1 and Azrael being traded to the Falcons past week 2, with Ellie taking over as GM. Obviously, you have Fanta's iconic message that with the Army actually eliminating the Buccaneers. And fun fact, they actually scored the fewest amount of points in a divisional round playoff game, which is at 20. Up next, I got the USC Gamecocks. This team was all right. They had, they did score. They had the most points scored during season 11 with 112. And yeah, even though Mean Green was extremely good offensively, they never scored 100 plus points. But then again, this was a struggling Monarchs team, so that could be a factor. And obviously in the playoffs, they lost to a game-winning field goal against Thunderherd So, and I don't know if any of y'all know this, but Trey had 330 receiving yards during his tenure with the Gamecocks, which was kind of funny. And obviously, your the accolades: Trey won Sack Daddy McTacklesworth, Trey won Kicker of the Year, Signer lost won LVP, and then Trey made All Pro in two positions, being in DE2 and kicker. Next up, I got the Birmingham Bluebirds. On paper, especially during the postseason, this team was supposed to go all the way. Trey at quarterback, having one of his best performances, winning MVP season 8. This team, especially with prom two, being at like your wide receiver one, this team was supposed to be like extremely strong during the postseason. But unfortunately, they did have a historically bad defense, which whoopsies, that's my fault. Being asked to be in the DB1 position, low key was not good for us. And I think it would have been better if I stayed out of that playoff game against the Chiefs. We would have a better shot, but it is what it is. And another fun fact I did put is that they had a point differential of 0 at the end of the regular season. And yes, there is a typo. That's supposed to be like season 8 for accolades, like Trey winning MVP, Sack Daddy McTacklesworth, Kicker of the Year, Kick Return of the Year. They're all supposed to be season 8. But yeah, number 26, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Season 10 absolutely revived this franchise because I believe originally this team was at like 28 out of 32 back in season 6. So with them being with Azinga's leadership at season 10, this absolutely changed my perspective on them. But this team Loki did get better and better with every time it was used. Like obviously season 1 they had no postseason run. Season 5 they won play-in but they lost the divisional, and then season 10 they actually made all the way to the Super Bowl. And some fun facts I did put about this team: yeah, they had a combined record of 6-8. They combined for a total of 4 1-point loss. Like 4 of their losses have been by 1 point. Like I remember the season 5, week 3, Broncos in the postseason, and then week 2, season 10 against the Ravens. That's like 4 times they lost by 1 point. Another fun fact is that all of the GMs have actually been on the bench. That doesn't mean that they haven't seen any field action, but they're the primary subs. In season 10, they managed to have a MVP and an LV team, and an LVP with that being a Zynga for MVP, and then Gigi Boy for LVP. And they had the third lowest points scored in the game with 13. And as you can obviously see, season 10 is most of the accolades position. At number 25, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is an exact opposite of what happened with Seattle Seahawks and Jacksonville Jaguars. Like this team was originally one of the bottom 5 teams I did put when I made the franchise ranking before season 6. But after Turlock revived his franchise and went undefeated with them and went 7-3, this team was had nice roster. It was good chemistry. I wouldn't say chemistry towards the Super Bowl, but there was a nice roster depth all around. And obviously, Fanta being a core simple member of the Buccaneers, being on there both times, and I obviously a lot of season 8 accolades managed, like a lot of them are like there's only like 3 accolades for season 2, and then a lot of a lot of accolades for season 8. It's just mostly Torlock and Zinga, a lot of stuff like Torlock winning quarterback of the year, running back of the year, GM of the year, and then all three members are part of the season 8 All Pro roster. At number 24, I got the San Francisco 49ers. And this was the first season Toasty played, and he did not disappoint. Although this team did win 2-3, this was one of the better teams in season 4 because they also had the Rams and the Raiders. So they were the fourth best team in my opinion. Well, no shit they were, but like Kelsey played incredibly well this season. This like having Bentley and Brand as a wide receiver, but the defense on this team as well was horrific. They averaged 61 points allowed. And then obviously for the fun fact I put, they had the spike play in the divisional that made them lose when Tulsi spiked the ball. And but the only accolade from this list is Brand being a member of the season 4 All Pro roster, being a wide receiver 3. At number 23, I got the Green Bay Packers. And in my opinion, this is the worst team to ever step stage on the Super Bowl. Winners or losers. They had both of their original wide receiver cores traded to different teams because of locker room issues. Obviously, I did not like the idea of being subbed out for blocks, especially during the week 1 win against the Raiders, where I was cooking the fuck out of the defense, just to be told that we're gonna switch out. I didn't like it. It didn't make sense, but they did pick up their slack. They did improve, even though they lost Weewu and me. Blocks did find a great replacement in Fanta, Deck. I don't think Bijan played that much on the game, anyways. With Deck winning fourth man of the year, Rage Beast actually coming back as a monster defensive DE, winning Sack Daddy McTacklesworth and an All Pro DE1 roster spot. Had the incredible upset during the divisional round, but I'm pretty sure that they have the least amount of points scored in Super Bowl history with just 39. So this team was just overall mid. At number 22, I got the Indianapolis Colts. They had the facts I did put in. They had the second lowest points scored in a single game with 12. They did beat the Nightmares with Azrael, Balls, and Rage Beast, and I believe Bag, which turned out to be a Zynga, but for FFL's sake, I'm just gonna pretend like and be like, oh, we all didn't know that was bad. We all didn't know Bag was a Zynga, so we're just gonna keep it like that. And this team actually never had a 1,000-yard receiver. The closest was actually me with 612. But overall, this was probably the 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 worst 4-1 team out of that season 7, because obviously they weren't better than the Nightmares or Coyotes. So this was probably the 3 seed was absolutely deserved. Now I did put the asterisk over the divisional FFW against the Nightmares because that was because they did find out that Bag was a Zynga, and then they had the huge scandal on it, and then they did the Super Bowl where do Colts versus Coyotes, and then obviously we lost, but it was extremely closer, and defense was a big issue during that Super Bowl. Whoopsie daisies, but it is what it is. Azrael did decent at DB with Fanta doing his thing on DE, making it to the All Pro roster as a DE2. But overall, this is the worst team that went 4-1 out of the 7th season in FFL. At number 21, I got the Miami Dolphins. This team against the Air Force Falcons, oh my god, it was absolute cinema every time. Their week 2-12, the week 3 win, and the playing loss, like, and they both went into OT. And it's like you cannot get more cinema than that. With Tina actually balling out at QB, Balls doing decent as a wide receiver, Deck doing his thing. This team managed to stay consistent at and their average points per game is 59.2. And as you can see, like from their regular season overview, like they kept it. A lot of their wins are close to that 59-point mark. So they were consistent with their offense. At number 20, I got the Los Angeles Tigers from season 5. This team, in my opinion, was the biggest waste. Because, like, originally they had Trey, Tina, and Azinga. This was supposed to be. No. No, he had Trey. No, my fault. Because I'm pretty sure Trey was on that roster. Yeah, they had. Because I think at one point they had Trey and Tina subbing for a week for one of them. But overall, this team, low key, it would have been good, but I think they imploded after the week 2 loss against the Broncos, and then they had two quote unquote rookies on the roster. They had the roster consists of Solo Labs, Azinga, and Domi at one point. Both members of which are now gone, but Azinga is still managing to win wide receiver of the year despite the chaos that happened. Said something about how he managed about the team. This is where we have our first Super Bowl champs. I got the Houston Hornets at 19. This does mean I do kind of believe that this is probably the worst roster that did win a Super Bowl, and it's not with good reason. Blocks didn't play that well in the Super Bowl. I was lagging. Didn't really have that great of a season. Tina carried that team. Let's all be real. Some facts I did put about this team. This is the first playoff divisional game that went to overtime. I did. It was supposed to say divisional. I accidentally did not put it in, but it is what it is. And obviously, they were included in the biggest trade of the season with the three-way team, and a lot of accolades there with Tino doing most of the heavy carrying, with him winning MVP, DB of the year, and then making the All Pro roster in two different positions. And then obviously Blocks did his thing too with kick returning, but he was behind good blockers, so that's not much to say the least. Next up, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. They were, I will say, they were better than the Hornets, but they did have that cheesy play style, especially with Azrael to Weewu connections, especially with the post. Yeah, that did. A lot of people didn't like their play style, especially after watching the divisional round against the Bluebirds. But they did their thing. They won the Super Bowl, so there's nothing much that they can say about that. They averaged like 67.4 points a game, and Weewu had more wide receiver yards than all the Chiefs receivers combined, and that's four of them, which is absolutely insane. Well, not that insane because like obviously you had Tina switching going in that QB at one point before they actually decided to play, and then but Weewu was still the primary wide receiver one on that team. Next up, I got the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this is another team that did get better over time. Same with the situation with the Eagles, but this time actually winning the Super Bowl, especially during season one where all chaos broke loose and they were absolutely dog shit, going 0-4. And then some fun facts I did put about this team is that they are technically the first winless team in FFL history, but no one really talks about it because they went 0-4 rather than 0-5. Because we all decided at season one to just scrap the idea of doing week 5 since we already know what the playoff matchup's going to be. And I do think people remember season 3 0-5 more than this. Loster, who was the original GM for the season 1 Chargers, actually abandoned the team during the season 1 trade apocalypse. Once he gave his ownership to Fanta, he just never looked back. They got a combined record of 6-8. Obviously, the season 5 Super Bowl ending when Turlock both lost both Prom and Gavin. the iconic shit bowl game against Ravens, and don't and if I'm not mistaken, I believe the original season one team consisted of Damian, Lobster, and Deck Tech. And obviously, a lot of accolades are from season five. Because even though season 10 they won the Super Bowl, season five they were just extremely. I feel like they were better. Next up, I have the Las Vegas Raiders, the most used team in FFL history. They did have a strong performance during season one, extremely weak performance in season four, and then they had the Super Bowl winning season, season six, and then the which I believe is their worst season being season 10. And then obviously like they had a combined record of 7-11. The only season where players didn't win an award was season 10. And then season 10 is where obviously Trey never finished as the GM of the Raiders. In season 6, they were the lowest seed to ever win the Super Bowl, with them being the fourth seed. But then again, they did win against the Packers. And then Trey and Duck are the only Raiders players to finish 2+ seasons, 2 or more seasons for the franchise. And then technically, Trey has 3 seasons, with him being the longest before the season 10 Lions trade. And I didn't include Turlock on this list for the Raiders franchise player staying, because he finished season 4 as a Patriot. And obviously, here are all the accolades. I had to do them all in a different slide because it was a lot more. But obviously, you can see they had barely any season 4. They had 5 season 1, and then season 6 is where they accumulated a lot. Next up, I have the Air Force Falcons. This was the lowest team to reach the Super Bowl, and this was well deserved. Turlock and Souls were an unexpected duo that somehow turned out well. Bijan ran cardio, Rage Beast ran cardio. It was just merely just Turlock and Souls passing each other the ball. But they did have a low. They did average 47.2 points per game, which is one of the more in the lower side up here. But other than that, they were extreme underdogs. Up next, I have the New England Patriots. Obviously, you had the scandal with the Tina for Turlock trade. They averaged 63.4 points a game. They were going well until we lost in the divisional against the Vikings. Whoopsie daisies. And obviously, Turlock and Azrael kind of ran through Azrael ran through the accolades with him in the more rushing categories, but they also had me at blocker, so that's kind of something to say for it too. Up next, I got the Minnesota Huskies. They average 44.4 points per game, with balls just slinging that shit deep to Azinga every time. They knew what was coming, but they couldn't stop it. And then Ryan being a fan favorite during the season, I really liked seeing Ryan play. Watered the plan. Am I right, guys? But this team did have low accolades too, with Azinga just winning wide receiver of the year. That's the only award that they won. And then Azinga being the only team member being on the All Pro roster. Up next, I got the Minnesota Vikings. This is fun fact. This is the only season where Bijan hit 1K yards in a single season, with him earning 1,242 yards, and that's it. And then Bijan was actually tied for second for most touchdowns in season 4. And then the accolades that just showed how much Prom kind of had to carry this weak wide receiver core to the playoffs. It was a kind of a miracle that they managed to get to the Super Bowl. I do think it was because of my lack of a defensive performance that they made it to the Super Bowl, but they did manage to keep it close with the Texans, which is something. Up next, I got the Marshall Thunderherd. They did score the lowest points in the Super Bowl. They were the first team. Don't give me a mistake. If I'm not wrong, they were the first team to get mercy in the Super Bowl. I'm counting that as mercy because they're it was like 77-27. So I'm gonna assume that was a mercy since I wasn't there. But they did average 76.6 points per game, with Turlock and Eddie duo shining through. And then that squeaker win against Gamecocks, and then obviously the loss against Mean Green. Next, I got the Nashville Nightmares. They are technically the winners of the season 7 Super Bowl, if you don't want to count that scandal that happened, because they did win. They did play the Coyotes in the Super Bowl, and then and it was revealed back was a Zynga, and then obviously you have the FFL against the Colts. And then, so technically, they are the first team in FFL history to have a forfeit loss. But this team was incredibly good. Weewu broke out at wide receiver. Who knew Prom and Weewu would be in a reliable duo, with a Zynga being a deep wide receiver too. Also, yeah, there is an error. I'm pretty sure Weewu was supposed to be the DE, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check real quick. Either that or Azinga went ahead and DE to hide under the bag impression. But overall, this team was good. But I do believe that Sacramento Coyotes were one spot above them. They were extremely strong during the postseason, and they did. No, I don't think they managed to keep it close with the Nightmares during their technical Super Bowl, but they did cause two mercies against the Colts and the Black Bears. They managed to average 80.8 points per game. Trey was just letting that shit fly to Tina and True. And then they had the T team, obviously. And then you have Tina winning Super Bowl MVP season 7 with his 400-yard performance in there. Up next, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team, there was something. Because like they had a combined record of 8-2, but they never had much success in the postseason because both of their playoff losses were upsets. Because obviously, the 5th seed Air Force Falcons and then the 3 seed Green Bay Packers. But what surprised me about this team is that Blocks did manage to have the most wide receiver yards in the single season in this franchise with 1,939. I didn't even realize he was that close to being the first player to hit 2K. Well, besides Christian / Fire in season 2. And then obviously you have like their roster. I forgot to mention that Lobster was a sub for season 6 Pittsburgh Steelers. But yeah, it was kind of like a balanced season between both. Up next, I got arguably the best single use team in FFL history, the North Texas Mean Green. However, Azinga got Prom should be is extremely questionable because they feasted both offensively and defensively. They averaged 75.8 points per game and they only allowed 43. And they were the 4th undefeated team in FFL history. Like, just look at the accolades. They were extremely dominant during the regular season and postseason. They would have beaten the brakes out of Miami Hurricanes for sure too, even if they did schedule. And then I do believe even with like the Thunderherd's original roster, they would have beat them too. So that's why I got them so up here. Up next, I got the Carolina Panthers. I will admit, I think season 10 ruined the franchise a little bit, but it was not that as impactful because obviously they had the combined total record of 10-5. They've always won their Week 2 matches, but they always had two or more players to win an award throughout their franchise history. They managed to somehow have 2 subs on their roster, and they have 14 accolades total, with 5 being in season 1, 6 being in season 6, but only 3 in season 10, which is understandable because that was one of their more weaker seasons. Up next, I got the Houston Texans. Their offense was something else. Even though, even before the massive trade in season 9, their offense was still producing with a combined record of 7-3, and their lowest points in that single game was 56 points. which was the Week 5 win in Season 4 against the 49ers. But they were the first team to lose in a playoff game. The first team to lose in an overtime matchup in a divisional round in a playoff game in Season 9 to the Hornets. But they had a lot of accolades to show for it, especially during Season 4, with Azinga breaking out wide receiver, being the first player to hit 2K yards, balls just slinging that shit up to him. Fanta still having a productive DE season, but it was just mostly Azinga and balls throwing it up to each other. And then Season 9, yes, even though like they had that massive trade, they still managed to have a bunch of. They managed to keep their the accolades clear in their name too. Up next at number 4, I got the Tennessee Titans. Now this is the highest placement for an under 500 team to be, but just hear me out. I'm pretty sure they played like 2 games without prom, so they had souls fill in, and yet they still managed to make the postseason over the Buccaneers. You have prom winning MVP, trade winning quarterback of the year, prom winning wide receiver of the year, balls winning GM of the year. Like this team, this team was good, and many people consider this team to beat the Falcons to win Season 2 Super Bowl. I'm still waiting for that matchup to happen, but that a lot of people are saying that this team would have went all the way, and they were absolutely strong playing as well. And they could have went 3-2, but they had that unfortunately heartbreaking loss to the Falcons with that over game winning field goal. At number 3, I have the Detroit Lions with a combined record of 7-2, average 74.6 points per game. They were technically the first undefeated team in FFL history. I remember I made that message, and that a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, but what about the 51 Lions? They were because they were because even though we didn't play Week 5, they did win all their matchups in blowout fashion. But they did like have a bunch of playoff losses for both of them, so that's kind of why they're now like 2-1. All right, at my number 2, oh yeah, their accolades. As you can see, like obviously, like Season 1 dominated a bunch of them. But for my number 2 team, I have the Atlanta Falcons with a combined record of 7-3. Always managed to be the second seed. This team was alright. I do consider the Season 2 roster to be a little bit more well balanced and a little bit better than the Season 3 roster because it was just Season 2. It was actually a spread out passing style between Charlock and me, and then Season 3, Gigi Boy was not that good. But as Aswell did quarterback for both teams, that for that both teams in the franchise, and he had a total of 4,771 passing yards, and something to man. They always scored 62 or 63 points in a playoff game, which is something. But and then obviously their accolades. They had a bunch of them Season 3, because obviously you got the match. They have prom and Azrael. Obviously you're gonna get a lot more. But finally, at number 1, it's the Denver Broncos. This was the second undefeated team in FFL history. Technically, the first 5-0 team in FFL, the first 5-0 team in FFL history, and the first 7-0 team in FFL history, which includes playoffs too. Like even though this team didn't win the Super Bowl season, I did put this team because I do believe that season, like the difference between the Falcons and the Broncos, the Falcons had more like I said before, Season 3 Falcons was kind of like you had Azrael and Prom. That's it. But with like the Broncos, they had like they had Hosey, Turlock, Bentley as the core Season 5, and then Prom, Brand, Duck as their core. You can't ignore the fact that Duck broke out. Brand was still decent. Prom was an elite level quarterback. But this team did lose to the Hornets, and I do believe it was like because of from not abusing the lag I had. I feel like if he would have abused the lag, they would have definitely won. And they were also capitalizing off of Blox's mistakes in that Super Bowl too. But overall, I just think that that's what the best ranking is. I want to say, like, this took a while. I started working on this like maybe around October 13th, and we're done to the final part of the video. That's it. And since season 12 is on, I might as well just keep updating it. So by the end of the season, I might have another video set up and rework, only going over the teams that are used right now, like the Bills, Saints, uh, Glendale Ghosts, Reindeers, Jaguars, and Steelers. Hopefully, maybe the Steelers will go down. Maybe the Jaguars will finally go up. Who knows? But for now, that's the end of the video. I want to say thank you so much for like at least staying till the end. And damn, I got work in like 10 minutes.